this.
Hey Phil, how's it going, bud?
All right, man. Good, you?
Yeah, not bad. Bloody crazy time since we last spoke last year.
I know, it's bonkers, isn't it? Yeah, it's crazy, mate. It's, I don't know. Oh, well, anyway. We've been lucky the most, I think, down here. I got to say, where we are, because it's so rural, you know, mate. But, yeah, so, anyway, I've been zoomed out, and my eyes are going square, I think, nowadays. But, yeah, I can't complain.
Have you been watching any series or documentaries over the last few months?
We have, you know, right? We watched Homeland. I heard a lot about Homeland, right? Netflix. I hadn't seen it, right? But me and my missus, we watched the 7 series, you know, there's about 15 episodes per series. Yeah. So we watched that. Well, that was brilliant. We watched that. Then we watched, what was the other one we watched? Oh, Chicago PD, which is on Sky Catch Up. Yeah. That was brilliant. And the Ozarks as well. Ozarks watched berserk, really. So, yeah, it was good. Really good stuff, you know.
You're going to be a TV critic soon now.
Oh, okay. We just finished watching the Barbarians last night. Not the rugby Barbarians, you know, the old Roman times conflicts, you know. So that was quite brutal, actually. But
I just started watching The Crown. I have just in case we go into another lockdown before Christmas. But no, thanks for coming on, Phil. How have you been keeping over the last few months, and how's your well-being?
Yeah, but it's pretty good, actually. It's pretty good. You know, it's been challenging, you know, because a bit like Groundhog Day in the early day, you know, the first lockdown, you know, going out doing walking and then coming back home and doing, you know, work on Zoom. But, you know, we've been very lucky where we live in Llanelli is very rural, you know, lots of places to go and walk. And, yeah, I've kept myself busy, mate, and a good, you know, been active, trying to eat properly, cut down a bit on the cider. So... yeah, it's been okay, mate. You know, considering with other people, you know, we've looked after my mum and dad a little bit as well, because they live up in Seven Sisters, so we've been, you know, taking provisions up there for them, you know. So, yeah, it's been fine, mate, and you know, it's just making the best of a difficult situation. But you know, we're very grateful that we're not, you know, it's not as difficult for us as it is for others, you know. So yeah, it's been okay, thanks.
And of course, in September, the RFU confirmed that all rugby below the championship will be postponed for the 2020-2021 season. And obviously now you're back in charge of Yorkshire Carnegie, which was formerly...
Hang on, Leeds Tigers.
Leeds Tigers, yeah, sorry. How difficult has it been for yourself and the club with absolutely no rugby for the last 8 months or so?
Well, it's been like, you know, everybody's, like, we've chatted before we came on about what series we watch on Netflix or Amazon Prime. It's been like that. It's been like the Leeds Tigers Zoom fest, you know, over the last few months. But yeah, it's been exciting, mate. You know, I went back there because it was my old club, really, and it was the club that gave me my first opportunity to coach. And you know, a couple of people were getting back involved who were there with me in the early days. So yeah, it's all been about resetting and trying to go again and get as much stuff put in place as we possibly can virtually, which will be a little bit easier when we can get together practically, you know. So yeah, we're trying to put a foundation in place so we can get going in the new year, hopefully.
Are the players training at home?
No, some of the, you know, we've adhered to all the restrictions during the course of, well, since March basically. So, you know, some of the lads have been getting together in smaller groups. You know, everything that's been allowed, we've tried to keep them going. You know, I've been up to Leeds a couple of times during the summer. It's been more difficult of late because between our lockdown and the lockdown over in England. So. Yeah, it's been, you know, it's not been easy in that regard. But as I said, we've all kept in touch. It's a new squad of players as well. You know, which we've got a lot of blind date. You know, we sort of had a lot of blind dates in the beginning. We didn't really know anybody when we were turning up on the schools. So so we've created a little bit of, you know, a little bit of team spirit and understanding of each other. So yeah, it's not a bad place. You know, in the current climate, you know.
Yeah, and despite the no-show of grassroots rugby, we've almost been blessed really over the last few months with, you know, the likes of the Super Rugby, you know, the Tri-Nations has just kicked back off. Unfortunately, Wales began the start of the Autumn Nations Cup on Friday with a loss. What did you make of the game?
Yeah, it's just frustrating. Look, if you think, right, that I've looked at it here, right, I hope it makes sense, but I've looked at it from a business point of view, right. If you think of what's happened the last 12 years, you know, and you think it takes you 3 years to build a team, if you like Gatland's era was amazing. It's the most successful in Welsh rugby history, and there were 3 or 4 blocks there of being able to build teams, you know. And if you think of it, we lost, like Gatland, if you like, the chairman, Rob Howley, the CEO, Sean Edwards, the MD, and Robin McBride, the sales director, if you like. If you look at it in a business context, right? Now, to lose those 4 people out of an organisation at the same time, you're arguably going back to base camp. You're starting again. Yeah. So, you know, to be fair to Wayne and Stephen and Jonathan, you know, the coaches now, you know, they're starting from scratch and they want to play a slightly different game. So it's just going to take time. It's, you know, I know people hate that at times. And then when you look at Argentina, they haven't played a test and they go ahead and they beat New Zealand. Yeah. You know, but they have been together and they had a level of consistency and continuity. So, you know, we've not just gone into transition, you know, from one coaching team to the other. We've lost all that intellectual property from the most successful leader of Welsh rugby. And, you know, I just question maybe the planning of that, I would actually, from a big picture perspective, because it's left Wayne with you know, a very, very tough task, along with the boys as well, with the players, you know. So it's going to take time.
Do you sort of think the rugby that we saw the Scarlets play for the last 2 or 3 years has almost hindered Wayne Pivac because, you know, we're not really seeing it at the international stage, and I think people are getting fed up. Do you get what I mean?
Yeah, it's look, you know, you know, in regional rugby or club rugby, the closest thing to international rugby is the Heineken Cup. You know, and that's, you know, that's only a short period of time, you know. And, you know, international rugby is slightly different. It's all about territory, and then it's about the control of the possession you have, you know, in the right areas of the field, you know. And that's what Gatland's teams are brilliant at, and that's what Wayne's teams are searching to try and achieve now, you know, because it's very difficult to run the ball from, you know, your own 22 in international rugby because, well, it is in any rugby, because defences nowadays are so well organised, as we know, you know, with Sean Edwards, with Wales, as we know, with Phil Larder back in the day with England. He was the first, you know, rugby league coach to make a real dent in union. Clyde Griffiths, when he coached Wales with Mike Ruddock to the Grand Slam. So, you know, defences are really organised. So, you know, you've got to have a real strategic plan of how you get up the field and try to, you know, conserve as much energy as possible so that you can really raise your intensity levels when you get into the opposition 22 in particular. So it's how many times you can get in there and how many times you can convert pressure into points, basically.
Yeah, it's funny you say that. I talked to Sean Edwards a few weeks back, and he's in his first 5 games as Welsh defence coach, Wales conceded just 2 tries in that Six Nations in 2008, and in Wayne Pivac's first 6 games, Wales conceded 20 tries. And I think Sean said, you know, these days it's going to be very hard to see a side that's conceding just 2 tries over that period of time. So he tried to defend Byron Hayward, but unfortunately Byron's now gone. Do you think there's some sort of infighting going on? Because there's been a lot of things said about the players over the last few weeks. I think Jonathan Humphreys come out yesterday and sort of defended the players. But, you know, do you think there's some infighting going on? And have you experienced that yourself in your coaching?
It's a good question, actually. We like a conspiracy theory, don't we? And we all got PhDs in hindsight at times. So, no, I look, you don't know, Nathan. You know, I wouldn't like to comment on that in one way because you're not in the middle of it. You're not in there. The boys, look, know any environments I've been in over the years. You know, when I've coached the Scarlets and the Blues. You know, everybody's got their opinions. Don't get me wrong, but when you're actually in there, there's you know, everybody's working hard because, you know, it means as much, to the players and the coaches as it does to anybody. You've got to respect what it means to fans, what it means to, pundits and, all that type of stuff. You've got to respect people's opinion. But when you're actually in the mix, everybody is trying hard and working hard. Yeah, you have discussions about different opinions and how you think you can improve. But when you've got people like Alan Wynne-Jones in there, you've got people like Jonathan Davies, the centre in there, Corey Hill, the second row, is one of the best line-out exponents I've ever come across, really, in my coaching career. I've been lucky to come across a few. So there's a lot of good rugby experience and rugby intellectual property in there. And I know Wayne is a fantastic collaborator, and he will be discussing all sorts of stuff, and you need that, You've got to have a discussion about, we don't want to go, have a situation where everybody's agreeing. They've got to agree on the plan from a cohesion and understanding point of view, but it's good to debate that. And I remember getting Watts, I think he's a manager up at Bristol now, the academy manager, telling me when we were working at the WRU together, healthy tension in a competitive working environment is good because you get the best out of each other, and ultimately that benefits the team. So, I am sure that's going on in a positive and constructive manner, and let's hope we can start seeing the fruits of our labour shortly.
Yeah, and you say that the tension. I think the first 20 minutes against Ireland, it was not like a Wales that I've seen under Pivac. It was, getting in the Irish faces. I think Liam Williams had a bit of a scrap with James Lowe and Alan Wynne-Jones with Peter O'Mahony, and it was really nice to see. Unfortunately, we didn't get the result. But do you believe now is probably the best time to blood the youngsters such as Callum Sheedy, Kieran Hardy? I think James Botham's just been called up because of course, Shane Lewis-Hughes against Scotland had a magnificent game.
Oh, he was tremendous, mate, and it was good to see. Taking your first point, Nith, it was good to see the way we were getting at them at the breakdown in particular, which is what rugby's all about. Now you've seen the pressure that Argentina and Australia put on the All Blacks in the past couple of tests at the breakdown. So it's a big area where you can really assert your physicality and aggression and really disrupt the opposition's attacking flow, But the problem, of course, after that, we just couldn't get any set piece ball to start building, momentum in our attack. That was the problem there. And that then took the fire out of our breakdown as the game went on, because there was huge efforts, going into that,
And if the unthinkable happens and Wales lose to Georgia, do you think that the pressure will be too much on Wayne?
No, they just got to leave them go. I mean, coaching's a process, Nathan, like you said about selection, right? Selection for me is about the balance, If you, for example, if you're going to play, Elias, the young hooker from Llanelli, Ryan Elias, you've got to play him with somebody like Samson Lee and Wynne-Jones. So there's a combination there. Yeah. You've got Alan Wynne-Jones, you've got Corey Hill, again, who's one of the best, they're really experienced. And then you've got Tipuric Faletau, and then, you put, you can put a young fella in on the blind side, and it's the same with you're going to play young scrum half, you can play with Bigger and Watkins and Jonathan Davies because of the experience there. You can put Lewis Zamet in with Josh Adams and with Lee Halfpenny. So it's about the balance, really, mate, to get those. And that's what I would do on Friday, because Georgia, mate, having been involved in the Tier 2 program for 5 years with Namibia, they're a strong team and they are physically strong. And they'll be looking to attack Wales around the edges, I would imagine. They'll be looking to go after the scrum. They'll be looking to drive the lineouts. So, we need experience and physicality in there. So this week's selection for me would be about balance and making sure that we can get momentum from that selection balance and then move forward into the English game,
But we're definitely going to need a scrum against Georgia, aren't we? but one of the main reasons for getting you on, Phil, was, of course, on Saturday, I believe it was 28 years to the day that Llanelli had that famous victory over Australia. Do you still have fond memories of that day?
Yeah, if anybody listening or yourself, if you can imagine, right, your most exciting moment in sport, and the reasons for that, whether you watch it in the stand or whatever it might be, right, that was one of the, the most exciting games I've ever played in or been part of it. And, chatting to Rupert about it and Gareth about it, it was, Gareth's point, it was a historic occasion, really, because, the town of Llanelli, the small town of Llanelli, if you like, had an amazing record against touring teams. And it was a historic day, really. The pride and, the overwhelming satisfaction of being able to sort of produce a game, a tactical game. We had a really tactical approach to that game. And, Gareth was and Alan Lewis was so great as a coaching duo. They're like the old Clough and Peter Taylor of football in those days. And Gareth was so inspirational, tactically astute. Alan was the same. It was just amazing. And we had so many inspirational figures around the club. Ray Gravel and Phil Bennett. All these people would, Grav came in to speak to us on the Thursday before the game, and Delmy Thomas would come in to speak to us. And, I remember down the Ashburnham Golf Club, right? We used to go down there before big games, right? And if anybody's played golf down there, it's a great place.
Yeah.
Right, it's a links course, it's on the bottom end of Llanelli. It's quite blustery down there. And Gareth gave, one of the most emotional speeches I've ever heard as a player. And we were all, the hairs on the back of our neck were standing up, really. And the responsibility that he made you feel that you had to the town of Llanelli when you were representing the club and all the history and the heritage of the club. Oh, mate, it was awesome. And, the game itself was incredible. It was a really still autumn day. Like, if you look at it from if you look at the ocean, sometimes the waves are flowing, but this was like a milk pond type of, it was just so still, the atmosphere and the crowd, the singing, the noise, and, the hairs in the back of your neck is standing up now thinking about the game, So it was just an amazing experience, and it was a historic occasion to beat, the current world champions at that time. We had a pretty good team at that stage. I think we were 14 internationals. Hugh Williams, a full-back, was a great player, but apart from Hugh, I think, the rest of the team were all, international players. So it was just wonderful, mate. Just incredible day, inspiring, historic, brilliant for the town, really.
And there's the iconic image of Rupert Moon being carried off the field with, the smile of a Cheshire cat. And I think he once described that Llanelli team as a weird and wonderful group of players. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I did. I captained him for 5 years before that, and then Rupert took it over. And there was some wonderful people in there. There was Andrew Lamerton in there, right? One of the best hookers of our era. I think he was making his debut. Well, he played for Wales, the following year in France. We had Ian Evans, Colin Rupert, Tony Cropsey. We had some amazing players, Emma Lewis, the Bull, Taro as he's called, Mark Perigo, the most eccentric rugby player most probably I've ever met, but also arguably one of the best, So, yeah, we a great bunch of guys who achieved a lot of success, mate. We had 7 cup finals, we won the league, the merit table, we came close to beating New Zealand. We didn't quite get over the line, but, some really great days, and led by Gareth, really. He was amazing coach, really.
And obviously when Llanelli beat the All Blacks, I think he said that every pub in Llanelli was drank dry. Was there similar scenes in '92?
There was actually, there was, right? We went out in the car park, right? If you can imagine, right? The car park was, I don't know, there must have been about 30, 40 inflatable marquee type of jobs. I know, like the bouncy castle type of thing. It was like a marquee blown up inside of it. So it was amazing. The place was packed. So we went out there. A lot of the boys were out there. Now, we didn't change for about an hour and a half, 2 hours. We did a shower. Then we went back to the dressing room, went up to the Straddy Arms and went into the Collier's Arms opposite the Straddy Arms, and that pub run out of beer. There was nothing left in the pub. So then we ended up going down to the Thomas Arms and then into Station Road, the La Caprice, as it was called in those days. I remember walking in on a table with Colin Stevens because we couldn't walk in on the floor because there was no room. So we walked across a couple of tables to get to the bar. So anyway, it's just, really good stuff. Yeah, really good, yeah. But we did drink one pub dry, yeah, for sure.
Just the one.
Just the one, yeah.
looking back at that now, I think kids of a certain age won't believe that, oh yeah, club sides used to play international sides. Do you think that should make a comeback? Because I think Sean Fitzpatrick once said that, you know, he'd love to see Scarlets against the All Blacks at Parky Scarlets. He said that's his dream. Now he's working with the Scarlets, of course. Would you love to see a comeback, obviously after lockdown, when we can get the crowds back involved?
Oh yeah, I would. We just need to, you know, we need to rekindle, you know, the hearts and minds of all Welsh rugby fans. Not, you know, the ones who go to watch internationals, but also the ones who go and watch Tim Saran on a Saturday, or Seven Sisters, or Carmarthen Athletic, whatever it might be. And that is one way of doing it. You know, I remember us playing, you know, Fiji, New Zealand Maoris with Llanelli on a Tuesday, and it was packed. You know, it was a day off work or an afternoon off work, and you know, people used to love it, and the places were packed. You know, and if you think now, the populations of towns, cities all over the UK are maybe, you know, 3 or 4-fold larger than they used to be then. So you know, it's just connecting the hearts and minds of people, and that's, you know, what people used to enjoy. You know, we did it in Leeds. When we went there, because we didn't have a huge history of rugby union in the city, we played Tonga and Fiji on midweek games, Wednesday nights in Headingley, and we had great crowds there, you know, because we wanted to try and build a history, build a heritage, and build an interest for games, and people just love it. And it's hard work for the tourists, mate. It really is, because everybody wants to kick their head in. Yeah. You know, metaphorically speaking, of course. You know, it's a tough old job, really. You know, it's not easy, and I just think this is one way that we could rekindle, you know, the hearts and minds of Welsh rugby supporters. You know.
Mm. And looking back at your time with Llanelli, do you sometimes think it was more of a rugby education, and did it have an impact on you as a player? You know, sort of looking down the line, nearing your retirement, as to becoming a coach?
Oh yeah, absolutely. You know, I came across, you know, some really, you know, great coaches. I remember John Ryan. He was the first one to sort of try and introduce a bit of sports science back in the late 80s. And then you had Alan Davies, ABC Davies, who's a real cerebral coach. You know, I remember us going home with about 5 or 6 flip charts in the boot with Alan. He was so meticulous with his attention to detail, you know. And then you had Gareth, who was just inspirational and ahead of his time, I thought, in terms of putting a team together. We had the first condition in Llanelli with Peter Herbert, then we had Mark Davis came in, and Tony did the stats and the video analysis, you know, back in the day. And yeah, and I always liked leading. You know, I was privileged to lead Llanelli for 6 seasons, and you know, it was, and I always wanted to give something back to the game, and it gave me everything, really, Ness, and that was something I wanted to do. And yeah, coaching was a natural. And we talked when we go to Llanelli to coach with Gareth and Nigel, actually, at one time, because I'd been involved as a leader with Gareth for such a long time there. But then I had a chat with Alan Phillips, who was at Cardiff, and said, coaching a club you played for me, it's the hardest thing you'll ever do. So he sort of persuaded me that when the Leeds thing came in, to go up to Leeds to, you know, to learn how to coach. They were in the 4th division, and you know, we were like a corner shop, but we became, you know, we went from a corner shop into Asda over 10 years. It was an amazing experience, but very fulfilling. And it's about wanting to make a difference for young people. And I've always wanted to give young players opportunities and try to make a difference and help them on their career path, you know. So yeah, it was I had a good ground. There were some excellent coaches, and that always gave me the passion to coach, really.
And it's amazing how you've sort of come full circle now, all these years later. What were those first 10 years like up in Leeds, especially coaching outside of Wales?
Well, if you can imagine now, right, sometimes you go in to see your girlfriend or your wife and tell you want to go out for a few pints with the boys, right? Well, you know it's going to be a bit of a tricky situation, right, to get out there. But, you know, I remember going to speak to Caroline, my wife, and I had 2 daughters. They were 8 and 6 at the time, both in Welsh. They were in Davies, Llanelli, Welsh-speaking school. So I said, we're going to move to Leeds in 3 months now. I'm going to go up with a coach. So I can imagine now, go out for a pint then, sort of, didn't seem too much of a traumatic question to ask you, Mrs. But look, they were amazing. My family at the times, we went up there, we didn't know anybody. It just felt right, Nick. It was a gut feeling. Robert Jones and I had an opportunity to go and play at Harlequins as professional players for 2 years. But, I was 32 years of age, I was struggling a bit with some injuries. And it was just a brilliant opportunity. It felt right. Great sporting history. John Charles, a brilliant Welshman who went up there, made a huge difference in the city. Ken Jones, rugby league went up and was incredible up there. So a lot of Welsh people had been, Gary Speed, God bless him, so there were a lot of Welshmen that were there, a huge history in rugby league and football and cricket. And I wanted to try and, add rugby union to that list so I wanted it to become 4 sports, not 3. So, we set about doing that, and it was amazing. We 4th division, as I say, we went from like a corner shop to Asda, and we met some brilliant people, and we attracted some great rugby players like Bram van Straten, Justin Marshall, Mark Regan, people like that. Yapi Mulder was a World Cup winner with South Africa in '95. So it was just incredible. Built it on, real passion for sport. Built it on an academy which Stuart Lancaster set up with us. And Simon Easterby was a big part of the original cast, if you like. Was coaching Ireland. Now was obviously a famous Scarlet player and coach. So it was just wonderful, just watching it growing. It was a process. It was a trial and error at the beginning for me, for sure, as a coach. And some people might think I'm still trialing and erroring, but that's what it's all about, mate. It's about learning and growing, and we did as a club. It was incredible, great experiences. We had a lot of Welshmen there, a lot of Scotsmen. A lot of island players, from Fiji, Tonga, South Africans. It was just a wonderful experience. And what I love about it now is a lot of people I will speak to will tell me, it was one of their best experiences they've ever had in rugby, which was great about trying to make a difference for people. And, my coach has always been a people-centered approach, and that's never changed, really. And those days were brilliant for that reason, really, the people.
And I think when you look back, I think you were in Division 3 or Division 4 when you
it was, yeah.
Yeah, and to get all the way to the Premiership, I think only Exeter Chiefs have done that since. And when you talk about creating a culture, you won all those leagues, but you also left a stamp with that Power Gen Cup victory in 2005. I remember even at the age of 9 seeing the significance of that. You beating Bath, because I knew how good Bath were then.
Yeah, they were, they were the cup kings, if you like. I remember our equipment manager, John Carey, had gone to Twickenham to have a look around the dressing, whatever. Anyway, he won the toss to get the home dressing room. That was a pretty, a pretty good omen. But yeah, the experience for that, I think we took 18,000 Yorkshire folk down there that day, which is incredible. It was all Welsh back row, which was great. Mark Regan, we had Andre Sneyman on the wing, Gordon Ross, who's now coaching the Dragons. Of course, he was out fly half that day. Alan Dickens was a good scrum half, great scrum half. He's now coach of England 20s. So they were a great bunch of blokes, and I'll never forget, after the game, I was quite emotional about winning. Obviously, it was the culmination of 10 years, really, and we built the team on the strengths of the city, if you like. Like, everybody talks about Yorkshire grit and passion for sport. So we were always trying to make sure that the supporters could recognise the team. So we'd always bring in players who had that passion, who had that work ethic, who would get stuck in under pressure, And that was a culmination of that. And I got quite emotional. I remember Jill Douglas, who was Carl Hogg's wife, still is, and was at the time. I said, look, Jill, I've got to quickly nip into the loo before you do the interview. So I'll never forget, I went into the toilet, a little cubicle in Twickenham, and I locked myself in, I couldn't get out. So he was waiting to be outside to do the interview, but it was quite a good thing, because I must admit, I was a bit emotional after it. And I think the locking in bit allowed me to compose myself to then go out and do the interview. But yeah, it was a wonderful experience, and just a shame, really, we couldn't carry it on. There were lots of reasons behind why it couldn't grow and develop. But you know, for those 9-10 years, it was an incredible journey of experiences. You know, not always successful. Sometimes, you know, the road is never goes in a straight line in coaching, and perseverance is very important. You know.
Yeah. And I don't know if you've watched that game back since, but it was on a knife edge coming into half-time. I think it was 13-9, just about going into half-time. And then Bath are looking to try and get a score for half-time. And Andre Snyman intercepts the ball and scores under the posts. And did you almost think then, you know, is going to be our day? Because that would have really deflated Bath, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it would have. You know, it was interesting. We weren't sitting far away. The boxes for the coaches at Twickenham in those days were sort of reasonably side by side, and a few seats in between. But I was, you know, my video analyst, Giles Lindsay, he was always tapped. He said, because John Connolly and Michael Foley went berserk in the back box, because we were just coming off the line and we were just hitting. And Snyman, you know, when he came to the club, Snyman said to me, he said, "Coach, what do you want me to do?" I said, "Mate, just be yourself. You know, I can't teach you to play rugby. You're a Springbok of 50-odd tests, played against the Lions. You know, he was an amazing character." I said, "Just be the best you can be." And he was the interception king, really, and he was always looking for it. So I could see, I think, he's going to have a go this night, because you could see that miss one ball come in. I thought he's going to have a crack at it, and he did. And over he went. And then, you know, Gordon's kicking was great. I think Belly scored as well, Chris Bell. So, yeah, it was wonderful. Great day. And that did take the wind out of their sails, so to speak. And then, you know, you're never sure about winning rugby matches, unless you're 50-0 up with 20 minutes to go. You know, you're not, that's very rare nowadays. You know, you just got to, you know, hang in there until the end, really.
Yeah. And you mentioned some of the players that played in. Mark Regan. I think Stuart Hooper was also there now coaching Bath. Tom Palmer, Richard Parks, of course, and Alex Popham as well, another Welsh player. Did you think Leeds can reach the heights that they did back in 2005-06 for the next few years?
It's, you know, mate, it's certainly an ambition. You know, we've had a huge reset, change the name back to Leeds Tykes. You know, we've moved away from Headingley to train and play at West Park Leeds. It's a wonderful facility. We will still play matches at Headingley, of course, but we don't need to be in the 20-odd thousand state-of-the-art stadium at present, but we need that link with them. And the potential is there from, you know, from a facilities point of view. It's about building financial resource. That's very important. And also Yorkshire's England's biggest rugby playing county, and it's a hotbed for talent. Yeah. So, you know, a lot of the key things are in place. You know, and I just want to make sure, as do all of us, that we can create a system that you know, the club is all about team first, honesty, hard work, and no excuses. Those are the 4 pillars that the players want to build the club on. And we'll see where we go, mate. Put it this way, it won't be for the want to try in, and there'll be a huge effort to, you know, to try and achieve, you know, firstly, being successful in National 1, and then trying to get promoted back to the Championship and challenge in there before we can think of the next step again, really. So, you know, it's clear what we need to do, but, you know, there's another story then trying to do it. So, you know, the support is there, and we just got to try and, you know, unpick it and then put the jigsaw back together over the next couple of years with a view of trying to make us successful again.
And as we know, I think in 2006 you returned to Wales with the Scarlets, replacing Gareth Jenkins, who then became the Welsh coach, I believe. That must have been pretty special coming back to Llanelli.
It was. It was, actually. I had about 3 interviews with WRU before that, because they came to approach me about being a Welsh coach. So anyway, we won't go into that story. It was quite an interesting story, that. But anyway, Gareth ended up, and deservedly so. Arguably, he should have been there a few years, you know, before, really. But, you know, he was there. And, yeah, it was amazing. We had, you know, a brilliant pre-season with the players. You know, we had Stephen there, Dwayne Peel, you know, Regan King. You know, we had Matthew Rees and Justin Thomas, you know, Scott McLeod, Vernon Cooper was your soldier there. You know, Alex Popham, Gavin Thomas. We had some great players, mate. David James was a record try scorer at the Heineken Cup. Mark Jones, you know, was out with the Crusaders now. So we were, you know, I was really aware of that challenge, and the chairman asked me, he said, look, Phil, just come, and we want to change things. We want to become more professional. We want to do this. We want to move forward. I said, okay, fine. So the first year was about trying to get the boys as fit as possible and get us as technically and tactically as efficient as possible. Nigel Owens was a massive help during that period in the first year. He came in and refereed training sessions on a Tuesday, which really got the players up to speed about the laws, you know, particularly in the contact area, what referees were looking for. He was just amazing. And I remember us playing Toulouse at Stradi in a game that Alan Roland refed, and he only gave away 2 penalties, one against us and one against Toulouse. So it was an amazing game that technically, as both teams, just incredible discipline. It was amazing. And, you know, to get to the quarter-final and beat Munster at Stradi, that again, you know, was incredible that night. You know, the fire, we could imagine, right? It's like November the 5th. It wasn't November the 5th at the time, but fireworks going off and, you know, things, you know, like streamers bursting out. And I remember, I think it was Jerry Holland, the manager of Munster. It was a load of paper, and Stradi was bouncing. You can imagine, it was like a circus. Everybody's going bananas, and he sort of went on the field just before kickoff to pull all these streamers off the sort of 50-meter challenge just to calm everything down, you know. All the crowd were giving him a load of stick. He didn't manage to clean it all anyway. But yeah, just that experience was incredible. You know, the players technically and tactically that night, we had a game plan, they stuck to it. And then, you know, we won 7 out of 7, but we find ourselves in a away semi-final in Leicester. I still find that to this day remarkable. But, you know, we came up a little bit short, which was a shame. But, you know, it was a great team. And the second year was about creating momentum and moving forward. The second year was starting to change into, but, you know, I didn't stay the second year, as you all know. Off I went. Yeah, it was disappointing that, but the first year was incredible. Some great players, great people, and we, you know, we played some amazing rugby. I think we scored 70 odd tries that year. It was a real Scarlets. You know, they talk about recent performances, but when you look back at that team, the way Stephen and Dwayne and Easterby led that team, and the rugby we played was incredible rugby, to be fair to them. It was, you know, the game against Toulouse away was arguably the most exciting game of rugby I've ever been involved in, actually, because at half time we were dead and buried, but second half again the players came out, they were amazing, and we had a famous victory.
Yeah, and I was just about to mention that game. I remember watching that in the rugby club, and, you know, at half time everybody just sort of, you know, going off to do their own thing. Scarlets are shit, you know, they're going out or whatever. But then obviously the big comeback happened in the second half. Did the belief, you know, in the run, in that European run, did the belief start there, coming back to beat Toulouse? Because if you look back at that Toulouse side, I know they've had a few barren years, and I think they're coming back now, but that Toulouse side was world class, wasn't it?
Oh, they you know, they were. That year, you know, we had London Irish there, right, who'd finished, who were in the Premiership final the year before. We had Ulster were the reigning Magners champions at that time. Yeah. And obviously Toulouse, I can't remember if they were the champions at that stage. I can't remember. They may well have been, and I don't know. Or they'd been, you know, they'd been the season or two before, but they were in their prime, as you say, and the players were amazing, you know. And I think when we beat them at Stradi, I thought, you know, we played a bit of a game of chess there, and the way we managed to beat them. And then when we went away, you know, we were lucky in those days. There was a guy called Gareth Potter there, who was an analyst with Craig Maloney. Craig went on to work at the Union and the Ospreys. But they were brilliant. And we did an analysis after the first game, and we tweaked a couple of little things, particularly in the contact area. And at half-time, we just said, look, you know, are they doing anything? Because of our analysis, we said, look, are they doing anything we said they wouldn't do? And are we doing what we said we'd do? So the answer was, they weren't doing anything different. So the answer to that was no, they're not. But were we doing what we were doing? No. Yeah. So we said, well, let's just go out and do what we do and know what we can, you know what our capabilities are in order to beat them. And that's what we did. But when you got people like Regan King there, he just sees space, you know, he's a magician, Reg, unbelievable. You know, along with Gethin Jenkins, the two most talented rugby brains I've ever coached. Amazing, the two of them. And Regan just started finding space, and we started scoring some wild tries. I'll never forget, I bought a new pair of glasses, about 300 quid, and I lost them, and Moriarty dived on me after we scored the final try to win the game. So those they had red stems. They're pretty funky actually, but I never found them. They're in Toulouse somewhere at the stadium. But
worth $1 million.
Yeah, just incredible, great team, great experiences, you know.
And you mentioned earlier that you've left the season after, I believe. You went from winning, I think, 6 out of 6 in the group stage one year to the next year losing 6 out of 6. What can you put your finger on the decline?
Yeah, there was a World Cup that summer in France, as we know, 2007. The Welsh players came back. They didn't have a particularly good experience, so there was a mindset scenario. Recruited with the greatest respect. The players we recruited were players that we wanted to develop depth in the squad, a little bit like Leinster have done over the years. But due to injuries, World Cup, those type of things, those players were thrust into the front line, and we weren't big enough as a front five at that time. But we knew all this. We were changing things, made a few poor recruitments with respect to those guys. But they were thrust into an arena that they weren't quite ready for, some of them, you know. So there was a little bit of that, and we had some of the conditions we played in, you know, weren't conducive to the pack we had at that time. And that, you know, I might sound a bit of an excuse, but it was a fact. I remember playing against Munster in the rain, and they kept the ball for about 35 phases, just with their pack of forwards, and they battered us physically, really. So, yeah, there was a few, you know, things that you do differently, you know, but I didn't think, and I still to this day, didn't think it warranted, you know, the situation unfolding like it did. You know, reading that I was sacked in the national newspaper wasn't a great thing. And I must say, it in reflection, it was like a bereavement, really. To be honest, it took me a long time to get over that. But you know, you move on and you learn and you take responsibility for decisions you made at that time. But I think, you know, it's made me a stronger person, you know, better coach over the time that, you know, since. So, you know, I still love the place and the Scarlets. Will always have you know, will always be part of my DNA, really, because I spent so much time there. But it was an interesting experience and one that you learn from, you know.
Yeah. Well, I guess, you know, coming towards the end of the second season, you must, in your mindset, must have been looking forward to the third season. It must have been quite a surprise when you saw that in the paper.
Yeah, it was, because previously I'd just been to New Zealand and Australia with Stuart Gallagher to start recruiting players, where we actually signed David Lyons.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was, but look, you know, you've got to respect that people make decisions and they have their own reasons for doing that. And, you know, could I have handled a few things differently? Absolutely. You know, could other people have handled a few things differently? Absolutely. But, you know, it's part of the experience, and you've got to respect that, and you've got to move on. That's why I think resilience and perseverance are two, you know, words that are at the forefront of coaching. Not easy.
Mm-hmm. And of course, after the Scarlets, you had spells with Wales in the 20s and Worcester before taking the Cardiff Blues job. That Cardiff Blues job, was it tougher than the Scarlets job in terms of pressure because of, you know, it is the capital, you know, it is the capital of Wales?
No, it was an incredibly, incredible privilege to coach the Scarlets and to coach Cardiff, particularly our capital city. But, you know, looking back, again, you know, you learn about how to deal with the press, but also the reality and the resources that were there at the time. You know, we were up, you know, I think there were over 29 people that left the squad, whether it's management or players, when we went in there. You know, it was incredible. And you're talking about people like Paul Tito, Martin Williams. You're talking about Ben Blair, you know. Xavier Rush didn't play Zav because his neck finished him, you know. Yeah. So we had a huge change, you know, from the analyst point of view, medical point of view. There's massive change. You know, never had our budget was very, very limited at that time. There was a restricted budget of 3 million that the regions had imposed on the groups, you know. and I was below that in the first year. But we showed a little bit of progress. The players were magnificent. We had a lot of boys, Ryan Harford, Nathan Trevette, boys that are coming in from the Premiership. Yeah. Then we had a lot of young boys like Reece Patchell and Corey Allen, Lloyd Williams, Macaulay Cook, Corey Hill coming through. So it was a huge challenge, and the players were amazing. So we had to not only reset the playing group, we had to reset the backroom staff as well. So it was amazing. And the second year, our win-loss percentage was 58%. Where we beat Glasgow back to back and beat Toulon, and we were a whisker. We were a ball hitting a post away from a quarter final. Yeah. It was. That second year was progressive. The players again were magnificent. Gethin had come back. Jamie was still there. Sam was playing Lee. So we had a good team, but it was a rebuilding process. And it was amazing experience. But again, when you look at the resources and the reality of the resources available, I think the boys did an amazing job, particularly in year two. And, that win-loss percentage of 58% is still the highest to this day. Yeah. And that's, so the players were given absolutely everything they had, but it wasn't happening quick enough in some people's minds. And again, Nate, you've got to respect that as well,
Yeah. And I think I saw somewhere a few years back that Jamie Roberts and Sam Obden one season had played more games for Wales than they did the Blues. And I don't think people realise the resources, as you just said, that are there for the coaches sometimes. And I think you're going to see it now with maybe John Mulvihill, with all these internationals coming up for Wales, this backlog of internationals, that, there are going to be a few funny results here or there, isn't it?
Yes, it is. It is about strength and depth. If you look at Leinster, I was talking to Stuart yesterday, Stuart Lancaster. And if you look at Leinster's academy and their recruitment process and their strength and depth and their coaching panel, they've got Philippe Contepomi, Stuart Lancaster, Leo Cullen, Romy McBride. That's top class coaching unit, that is. And the resources that they get, pumped in is amazing. But we had a player management system that we used, which Tristan Bevan and I put together when we were at the Blues, and it was all about red, amber, green, really, and the standards you were. So if you were a green player, you were up to Heineken Cup international standards. If you're an amber player, you were up to Magners League, as it was at the time, and if you were a red player, you were up to Premiership standards. So we had a squad with those three dynamics in them that we had to manage the group, and we, I think we did that really well. And Sam and Lee, to be fair, the year that Sam was captain of the Lions and Lee went in 2013, he was available for every game that he could possibly be available for the Blues, which is 18 games on top of his international rugby. It's about 30 games total calendar, I think. Then it might have changed now. And they were available, but obviously they didn't play in all 18 because I think they both played about 15, 16. We didn't pick them for the last couple because obviously you don't get picked as Lions captain every day, do you? So you would sort of, look after the guys there. If we're in cup finals, it would have been different, but we weren't challenging at that stage, So they were, it was an amazing experience, so privileged to have done that job. And it was the most rewarding experience in terms of learning it, as well, in terms of putting a structure in. I think the professional structure and process we put in was pretty good. And the playing group, we just really couldn't have asked for any more out of that group that we had at that time, which is a balance of very young players and some international players. And it was a shame in a way because I felt we could have built something there quite special,
Yeah, do you sometimes feel frustrated? Obviously, when you look back at the Scarlets, you achieved something as a coach, 7 victories in a row in the Heineken Cup that no other Scarlets coach has done since. I know Wayne Pivac got the Scarlets to the semi-finals a few years back, but I think he dropped 1 or 2 games in the group stage. And again, with the Blues, you look at that group with Glasgow Warriors, Toulon and Exeter. I don't think anybody in Europe would want a group like that. And you beat Glasgow home and away. You give Exeter a game home and away, and then you obviously beat Toulon at home. you know, is it frustrating for you, you know, when you were a coach at the Blues to think, you know, we've got a basis here for something really good to build over the next few years? And again, were you saddened by you know, you losing? I don't know if you've lost your job. Did you leave by mutual consent?
Yeah, I just moved on really, and respectfully so, and yeah, I moved, which was, yeah, as I said, it was a shit. I don't know if it's frustrating because you look at yourself as well. You know, when I look back on the two experiences, I've learned a heck of a lot about, and I've loved coaching, and I've been very lucky to coach in, you know, in some big occasions against some mighty teams over the time. So I don't know if it is frustration is the right word, Nathan. You know, I certainly love coaching, and I certainly love coaching at big occasions. You know, like we mentioned previously about the Toulouse games, the crowd, the atmosphere. I love it all. And when you win, of course, you're hailed as whatever. And when you lose, you're not so popular. So you're a very popular woman, and then you're not the other. But it's, you know, coaching at times is overrated. You know, and it's not all about one guy. You know, one guy needs, if he is the leader, he needs to set, you know, the culture and the direction, but that needs to be done in collaboration with a number of different factors. You know, you've got your board, you've got your chairman, you've got your players, you've got your staff. So, you know, you can become a facilitator, you know, at times, but, you know, nowadays it is about, you know, planning, it's about collaboration, and it's about inclusion. You know, you've got to make sure that everybody feels valued, they have a sense of belonging. You know, there's a level of control and safety in an environment for people, and those are things that are so important. And when I look back, you know, my learning, I've done it really well at times, other times not so well. You know, and you've got to learn from those experiences and move forward. And I think I've done that. And would I like to coach at professional level again? Absolutely, I would. You know, and that might come with Leeds, it might come with an international team. You know, because I think I've experienced all levels of coaching in the game. In Wales, I've been in the Championship, semi-pro with Cardiff when we won the Premiership back in 2008. You know, under 20 coaching, tournament coaching with the under 20s, with Namibia at the World Cup. So I love it, and you know, it's a great profession, but it's not easy at times, and you've got to look in the mirror a lot. You know, about what your part is, and I've played some really good parts, and other times maybe with a bit more experience at that time I would have done things a bit differently, but that's all about learning it, isn't it?
And talking to Namibia, I believe just a few months before the 2015 World Cup you went from a consultancy role to the head coach. What's the gear shift between club rugby and international rugby?
It's understanding you haven't got the time. You haven't got the same amount of time that you got with players. So if you're trying to develop, so say for example, you know, in defence, you want your outside foot up as a preference. So as you go forward, you know, your inside foot comes forward, you keep your body square, blah, 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 that sort of stuff. You've got time to do that at club level. International level, you haven't. So you have to be very, very clear in your planning process of how you want to play, and then the type of players. It's about getting the best team, not, you know, it's getting the best balanced team on the field, not the best 15 players. And I suppose you hear that a lot. So it's about selection, and it's also about having a clear way of playing, because you haven't got time to do any fundamental shifts. You know, in international rugby, for example, maybe the autumn is a time to experiment in a way with selection and with certain ways of playing, but then you've got to win Six Nations and you've got to be competitive at a World Cup or try and win the World Cup. So there are stages. Your summer tours could be a bit of development, your autumn internationals, but at the same time you've got to have a clear framework before you go into any of those competitions, and your selection needs to be balanced, and then you can grow from there. You repetition of those key principles. That's where Sean was brilliant. Just one particular drill, repetition, repeat, and he did that for 12 years. And I knew everybody saw the results. Yeah. And obviously do the same for France. And if Gethin, whoever goes into the Welsh job now, you know, if they have an opportunity to repeat, they will do, because And also, you don't have a lot of time. You know, sometimes you may have 8 minutes on scrums a session, or you might have 10 minutes on defence. It's such a fluid and dynamic game now, and you can't keep the players on the field for 2 hours because you want to train at an intensity level that arguably players can only cope with for 40 minutes. So there's a lot of challenges in coaching at the moment, to try to get that right. But it is about having a clear plan and then getting your selection balance in order to get momentum.
And you've now coached at 2 World Cups, of course. And what's it like as a coach when you're locking horns with the likes of Steve Hansen and Rassie Erasmus? Because I believe in the last 2 World Cups, the winner of the World Cup has come from your group.
Yeah, tell me about it. Yeah, it's like knowing, it's like knowing you're going out, you're going out into the desert, if you like, with a limited amount of water, right? You haven't got a copious amount of water, and you know at some time it's going to get very tough, So you've got to be you've got to prioritize what you're doing. You've got to be really clear again, as I say, in how you're playing. And that's what we did with the boys. We had 7 weeks to get them prepared in the first instance, with 70% of the boys being amateurs, basically. That was in 2015. So we prioritised basic skills, and we prioritised conditioned games, and we prioritised functional strength, like tyre flipping, all that sort of stuff, because we had players who were 25, 26 at the time, who had a training age, who were about 16 years of age when you think of boys in our systems in this country. So we had to prioritise, and we did, and we went and we had a go. But, we knew that, we didn't have as much water to put in as the All Blacks did, for example. So we had to look at a team of players. What levels could they last? 80 minutes at World Cup level? Could they last 50 minutes or 60 minutes, or could they last 40 minutes? So there was a real balance from selection, and it was all about prioritising and making sure the boys understood their jobs, back to front, really, and we just hung in there. So we had a real understanding of the levels we needed to attain, the standards, physical standards, line-out percentages, scrum percentages, breakdown percentages. So we had all of that stuff we really worked on, so the players understood what they needed to do in order to be competitive. We weren't going to beat New Zealand, Nith, or South Africa or Italy or Argentina, but we knew we could be creditable. So, we dropped our win-loss ratio by 50% in those World Cups because we were more competitive, and we felt in the 2019 World Cup that we had a chance to beat Canada with Kingsley. So there were 8 Welshmen in the 2 coaching groups between Canada and us, which is amazing, really. We wanted to have a photo together, but we never did because the typhoon came.
Yeah.
God bless.
That game goes down as a draw now, I believe, doesn't it?
Yeah, it was. Well, in the first World Cup, we achieved in the 250, we achieved Namibia's first ever World Cup point.
Yeah.
With a playing group of under 1,000 players, and as I said, 70% of the boys were amateurs. In this last World Cup, now we achieved 3 tries. We never scored 3 tries before, which we did against Italy, and we achieved the draw, as you say. But it was a shame for Canada. It was a shame, because they had some great players who were retiring, like DTH, who beat at the Scarlets, and they had some great players who were retiring from their international team, and we had the same as well. So they were 23rd, we were 23rd, they were 22nd in the world. So we thought we had a chance, and we built our game plan up towards, against Italy, we wanted to score tries. We did. Against New Zealand, we wanted South Africa, we wanted to stop them all. Against New Zealand, we wanted to still be in the fight going into half-time, and after 38 minutes, I think we were 10-9 down, although the scoreboard was a bit unkind in the end. But, we gained the respect of the world champions at the time and the future world champions. So that was wonderful to see all those boys, putting so much effort in. I remember us doing 5:30 a.m. scrum sessions when we started. So it was just an amazing experience. But I didn't think you're waking up every day to blue skies, right?
Yeah.
That can't be bad.
No.
That can't be bad. And the beer is phenomenal. you can have a good session and wake up the following morning without the hangover.
Yeah.
So imagine that.
Amazing.
It's amazing.
Having played New Zealand and South Africa, immediately after playing those 2 consecutive games, who were your favourites for the World Cup last year?
It was South Africa, because they take, if you think, right, they take off, right, they take off the Eiffel Tower, and then they put back on the Statue of Liberty type of thing, if you know what I mean. Right? They were just huge men, and they are uncanny. No, not uncanny. Maybe that's not the right word. The subtle pressure they put on your breakdown, right, was amazing. The pressure that they could generate in different areas of the game, whether it's breakdown, whether it's set piece, right, whether it's through counter attack, right, they could put a huge amount of pressure on people, and they could sustain it for 80 minutes. So if your game wasn't on the money for 80 minutes, if you couldn't stick with them, it's like when you play the top teams. You go to first gear, you stay with them. You go to second, third, fourth, you stay with them. But when they go to fifth gear, then if you can't go to fifth gear yourself, you're in trouble. Yeah. And that's what we did the day when we beat Toulon. We stayed with them. Our Ferrari, matched theirs, if you like, right? We said we had a Ferrari in a car park today, and it's going to be, it's going to have a top class engine, and we're going to go from 1 to 5, maybe to 6 gears, and we're going to stick in there. And that's what South Africa were able to do. They were able to exert so much pressure on you. What Wales did in the semi-final, to stay with them as long as we did, was unbelievable. If you think of the injuries that we had as well, just a remarkable performance, I thought. So they were really, they were the team that you think, what, they can match you physically, and they can match you technically, tactically. So, they were always a challenge. And then, of course, they had Colby and Mapimpi on the wings, who were amazing try scorers. So, great goal kicker, massive front 5 try scorers. And they had midfield penetration as well. People who could really get over the game line. So they ticked all the boxes, mate, for a World Cup winning team. If you look at the history.
And finally, on New Zealand, what have you made of their decline? Because I believe they failed to win 4 out of the last 7 international games. What have you made of the start for Ian Foster to his coaching career of New Zealand?
I think, again, bit of a change. Steve Hansen, right, was a very, very, one of the best coaches ever. Very astute coach, a very astute coach in terms of managing people and seeing the bigger picture, looking outside of the box. And obviously Ian Foster was part of that system. So when you look at the best performance of late from New Zealand, was our second test in Auckland, right, where they were extremely sharp and smart the way they played, their analysis, the way they picked up different things. And then you looked at the difficult performances have all been about disruption at the breakdown and the speed that the opposition are able to generate from that. England in the World Cup, Argentina last Saturday, and Australia when they beat them a couple of weeks ago. So, I think they've got to sit down again, where they did with Graham Henry in 2008, and recalibrated the mindset. I think they've got to sit down arguably now and look at resetting and recalibrating their ability to deal with pressure. And they've done that once, and I think, they'll go back and do that again, because teams have found a way to rattle them, haven't they? And they've got to be able to find a way to deal with that. So I think there'll be a recalibration, but, the standards are certainly still there. But I think it's just maybe they've got to reset and have a look at their discipline and how they react to pressure. And that's obviously a consequence of the discipline. So I think you might see a reset, and they're not going away, mate, anytime soon, that lot. They're not going to, so coaching is a process, mate, whether people like it or not, it is a process. And, Argentina's process was a little bit fragmented leading up to the All Black game, but nevertheless, they had a process, they stuck together, although being, it was not socially distant, it was mega distance at times, with limited resources, but they stuck together and they had a plan, and they made that plan work as best they could in the circumstances. And that's a wonderful, example of teamwork and team spirit and players buying into the pride of playing for your country.
Definitely. And finally, Phil, before you go, is it okay if we finish with a quick fire round?
Yeah, man, fire away.
Firstly, who's the best player that you played with?
My brother-in-law was pretty sharp, Jonathan Davies. He was amazing. And arguably, he is the best player, right? Although I think we saw his best days in rugby league. He was still pretty cool as a rugby union player, but some of the things he achieved in rugby league was amazing. And Emma Lewis and Mark Perigo, they were the two best forwards I played with, especially. Emma was like the bull, as he's called, Taro's strengths, so strong, good ball carrier. And Perigo was the Sam Warburton of our day. He was, incredible. And if he just, if he just stuck to rugby as consistently as a lot of others did, he'd have been, a double, maybe a triple British Lion. He was that good,
Yeah. Best player that you've played against?
Dean Richards, Wayne Shelford, Buck Shelford, more than likely.
Yeah.
Buck Shelford, more than likely.
Best player that you've coached?
For diligence and application to his job, right? Sam Warburton, Lee Halfpenny. Incredible. For actual rugby intellect and understanding, Gethin Jenkins, Regan King, unbelievable.
Yeah.
Just, Gethin would be two or three phases ahead of anybody else in his thinking. So, I believe in due course, he's only been coaching 18 months, which is a tomato season, really. But I believe in due course he'll become, a world-class coach for sure, because he has that type of intellect and he has that aura about him to get it across as well.
Best match you've been involved in as a coach?
Power Gen Cup's obvious, but Blues Toulon, Scarlets, Munster. I know you've asked me for one, right, but I apologise for saying two. I know I talk too much anyway, but those two games, right, were incredible results, but I had tears in my eyes at the end of both games because of the crowd. There is nothing better in the world of sport, I don't think, particularly our sport, rugby, than a Welsh rugby ground singing at the end of a game. And I stood up at the Arms Park and thought, you know what, this reminds me of back in the 80s, 90s, where the whole crowd was singing. Yeah. And I must admit, I had tears in my eyes going down into the dressing room because of that atmosphere and that spirit. And it was exactly the same at Straddy. That night we beat Munster. And that's all down the crowds, that is, and supporters, and the passion of Welsh rugby supporters when they, get behind the team and their pride is sort of overflowing for what the team has done for them on the pitch. It's just incredible, really.
Yeah. Worst drinker that you've played with or coached?
Loves drinking or can't drink.
Can't drink.
Stephen Basham, oh my word, what a character. Ex-All Black fly half, came to Leeds and coached me when we got promoted. And he was a top guy. When we used to go for end of season session, we used to put a pair of boxing gloves on him, like these big oversized jobs. So that he couldn't do any harm, these big, he's a character. But 2 pints of it, he was gone. He was all over the shop.
Well, I was just about to ask you, who's the biggest troublemaker on and off the field? Would that be Basham as well?
No, I wouldn't say troublemaker, right? But characters, right? Playing-wise, Robert Jones, my brother and Jonathan, when we were playing, they were mischievous buggers, they were comical. They were flipping murder. They were funny. They were really comical, They were really, really comical. But as a coach, Mark Regan, the ex-England Lions hooker, he was a character. If you wanted to stir it up a little bit, Ronnie was there, on off the field. He was a character, a great player. Every time he's played, right, against his former club, he's never lost a game.
Really?
When he's playing for Leeds, we played against Bristol, played against Bath in some really big games. I remember us playing Bristol at Memorial Ground. Gina White was playing tight there, and we had a little plan how to frustrate him. And Ronnie was at the centre of that, and he was flipping brilliant. He was a character, not just really old school stuff, funny, mad as a hatter, and a real nice guy, all of them, Rob as well. He's my eldest daughter's godfather, and Jonathan, we're close to the family, but real characters.
Yeah.
Real characters, yeah.
And finally, Phil, if you weren't a rugby player or a coach, what would have been your dream job?
Very privileged to be a policeman for a couple of years.
Yeah.
But traveling, I think I'd have been like a traveling correspondent, right? going all over the world and experiencing different cultures, and which I've loved. Africa, Japan, more recently has been incredible. And when you walk around, I got a good pal of mine from where I was brought up in Seven Sisters, Richard Parfit. He does a lot of walking and takes photos. So I'd love to be able. Well, I do it now. When I walk around the coastline in Llanelli, and I love all that stuff. Yeah, so maybe a travel correspondent going all around the world, just taking photos and relating experiences back to other people, like a bit of a holiday guide. Come here, look at this.
Place in the sun.
Place in the sun. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Well, Phil, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on. I know we've gone over a bit, but thanks for your time, and all the best in the future with Leeds, and hopefully we can get you back on in the future.
Yeah, pleasure, Nate. Good, well done, mate. Keep up the good work. Nice one. All the best.
Well, have a good day.
Cheers on you, mate. Bye-bye.